This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to podcast. I have a special guest tonight, Ms. Shana Francesca. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Rhonda. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little bit buzzy, but I'm being able to understand you.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I can fix that. Is that better?
No.
Okay. Because I don't hear anything.
Okay, no worries. If I have any trouble understanding you, I'll let you know.
Very good. So tonight we're going to talk about joy, creating joy for your life by your own design.
Yeah.
So when I told Shana that her pictures that I saw on her bio gave me life, they gave me some joy today. I was like, oh, girl. Tell me about yourself, Shana.
Yeah. So quick backstory. I grew up in an abusive household, in a very extreme alt-right conservative Christian, evangelical Christian cult. And
Wow.
yeah, some heavy shit. I'm none of that anymore. It took me a really long time to heal from that, to be able to see from that. And what I've come to understand in life is that lots of people have rules for us and none of them have anything to do with us, right?
That's
they
good.
have everything to do with their own insecurities, everything to do with their own need for control. And at some point I just took control of my own healing journey, of my own path, and began to recognize that there wasn't really community around me, and I was going to build it, right? And I mean, there was, and then there wasn't, right? There was people around me who were creating community, but I didn't feel any part of it because I grew up in a cult-like environment where you couldn't let anybody from the outside who wasn't also in that cult anywhere near you, because then they would be like, hey, actually, that's pretty
messed up, right?
Yeah, I'm like, can I say the F word?
Hey, do you?
Okay.
Do you? I got on this end. Do you?
I always like hesitate. I'm like, am I allowed to say bad words? Like it's pretty fucked up. And so, it's very insular. And so at some point I just was like, fuck this. And I just started to try to figure out my own path, but it took a really long time to get to a place where I felt like I had permission to actually experience the world based on what I actually wanted, because of indoctrination. And what I've come to understand is that all of us, if you live in this world, you live especially in the United States, are the product of propaganda.
Yeah.
And that propaganda affects us in different ways depending on how this world classifies you. And so my motto has become two things. Number one, understanding that joy comes from knowing that we aren't meant to live this life it's not meant to be comfortable. It's not meant to be comfortable. We're not meant to be happy all the time. Happy is temporary. Joy is deeper rooted. Joy comes from living authentically. Joy comes from being willing to be uncomfortable. Joy comes from curiosity and play and not giving a fuck about what other people think. And so my motto has become being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And number two, getting clear that we do not wade daily in systems of oppression, in a world built on systems of oppression, and think we come out clean.
Right. Can I back you up for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
How old were you when you started creating environments for yourself and your happy spaces and your place for yourself because you were dealing with abuse? Like, how old were you? Because you seem to be kind of young from reading your bio information. And you're
yeah. I'm almost 40
already.
Yeah, but I'm almost 40, Rhonda.
Okay. You look good. Okay.
I
Okay.
know, girl. See, here's the thing that I say. It's when you moisturize from the time that you're young, you
Hmm.
don't get wrinkles that you have to deal with. You know what I'm saying?
That's important. Yeah.
So I look young, but yeah, my journey towards healing, I would say my journey towards healing, my fracture in no longer buying into the bullshit that I was taught,
Hmm.
at least in some degree, there was fractures starting to really happen when I was 15. Because of a very traumatic event. I was sexually assaulted by my father.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm
so
so
at that
sorry.
point, and he had been grooming me for 3 years. So at 12, he forced me to take a chastity pledge in front of my 2,500 person church. And then he began grooming me for 3 years. And so that he could do what he wanted to do. It was about ownership. And I knew that that chastity pledge was about ownership because I didn't want to do it in front of everyone. I was like, I'll take it, but I wanted to do it in private. And he insisted on me doing it in public. And so it was about him planting his flag of ownership over me. And so because none of my requests were ever honored, even when I wanted to go along with the root of things, I stopped buying into any of it. But it took a long time. Like propaganda and indoctrination doesn't just end in one day. You don't just wake up and like, I get it, right? Like
Yeah.
it takes so much work. And so it was probably until I moved in with my grandfather, my mom's dad, when I was 25. He was dying from cancer.
Hmm.
And it was probably the most incredible year of my life. It was a moment to take a breath and step away. And I didn't ever move back home. Like after that, I moved out on my own and I was able to but it was the beginning of this healing journey where I had a father figure who actually cared for me and wasn't part of the indoctrination that I grew up in. And it was
Good.
beautiful protection where I could explore what felt right for me and what didn't. And he was just this supportive person. And so that launched me into now I'm 38. So, I was 25, 26 when he passed away. So a 12, 13, 14-year journey where, a lot of people along the way gave me a lot of grace and answered a lot of questions that they didn't have to, and
Okay.
helped me to see the world in a way that they didn't have to, right? Like they provided metaphors for me to view the world. And so, I have committed myself to understand that we cannot experience joy when we're only allowed to experience the world based on someone else's rules and someone else's control. And if we're spending all of our time worrying about controlling and extracting and exploiting other people in order to gain our success, it's stealing our joy along the way.
Gotcha.
And so for me, viewing the world with empathy, but also understanding the systems, gaining a deeper understanding of the systems that got me there and got us here, right? As a world and as a country, is what has allowed me to recognize like joy can only exist in community and connection, right? In
Okay.
true authentic community and connection.
So now you have designed a full business around life design and even your interior. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So for me, I went and I got a BS in interior design because I understand why, but then I didn't have the language I have now. What I know now is that we spend 2/3 of our life at home, inside of our homes. I have a whole thought process around that, whether or not we should be spending 2/3 of our life inside of our own home, but that's whole nother conversation.
Okay.
But we spend 2/3 of our life inside of our home. Our home is a direct reflection of our beliefs about ourselves and directly affects our mental health and is an indicator of our mental health, right? I truly believe that our homes can be a vision board for our life. And that doesn't necessarily mean, and absolutely do not mean that it needs to look like an Instagram post or a Pinterest or any of that shenanigans, because none of that has to do with who we are as a human being and who we are authentically, right? And so, as a kid, whenever really terrible things would happen, I would rearrange my physical environment. And that eventually led me to become an interior designer.
Okay.
And to be able to do that for other people, right? But I also learned that 75% of your job as an interior designer is being a therapist. You are elbow deep in people's lives. And renovation of someone's home is one of the most difficult emotional experiences they will ever go through, along with moving or death, because you are tearing apart. Now that I know that it is a direct reflection of our beliefs about ourselves, you're tearing apart you're tearing apart their beliefs about themselves. You're renovating that. It's a deeply personal process. But all the things that I learned by connecting with my clients and being in their homes allowed me to recognize that what I was doing, working with them, was much more powerful than just changing their physical environment. It needed to be bigger than that, and to be able to connect with a lot more people, and to be able to have this conversation on a much higher level, and interior design be part of it, but not be the center of it, right? Life design being the main focus, the thing where we empower ourselves, we give ourselves permission to fuck the rules and to live our life according to who we want to be, rather than who society tells us we have to be.
Now, I've always believed that if you have like a cluttered space, there's a whole lot of junk in a room or whatnot, then that is an indicator of what's going on inside of you, or maybe that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it doesn't mean that all clutter is bad, right? Like what some people perceive as clutter is really like when you look into an artist's home, there's stacks and piles of things, but those piles of things happen to be organized. They actually happen to know where things are, but they need to be surrounded by more things to inspire their creativity. That's different than a cluttered mess or walking into a hoarding situation. And I've walked into all kinds of situations in my clients' lives, and I can usually tell pretty quickly what I'm looking at, whether it be, you know, piles of something that's organized and inspiring to someone, or it is an overwhelm. I can tell by their body language. Our body responds to things before our conscious mind does, right? So like a basic example is like in a dating situation. If you're out on a date with someone, they take a sip of their water, right? And they put it really close, they put their cup down really close to your cup. And then you feel the instinctive need to move your cup away. It's because you don't feel safe with them.
That's
right?
good. That's good.
Right. And so it's like the same, your body's responding and moving your cup away from them to protect yourself before you've even consciously allowed yourself necessarily to acknowledge that you don't trust them, right? And our bodies respond to things in ways that that we don't consciously recognize. So I'm always watching my clients' body language as we're walking through their homes and getting a feel for what's actually going on, and then being able to assess, you know, how we go ahead and help them. It's the same way when I work with people as a life designer, and now as, you know, my focus on being a life designer is I'm paying attention to people's body language as they're describing their life to me, right? That I can understand the ways in which they feel stuck, and we can kind of work through that and empower them to abandon whatever rules they're caging themselves in with.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times, you know, we live by, like you said, other people's rules because we're raised with our parents. So we have their rules, and like to get yourself from underneath those, to recreate something for yourself, and just to become, even when you talk about thinking about what other people think of you, or having permission to just, like you said, do stuff your way. Sometimes it takes a while for people to actually get to that point, and some people don't get there. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And it's work. Sometimes it takes years, because there's layers of things underneath of it, right? It's not just okay, yeah, give yourself permission and now let's do it. It's much deeper than that. You've got to address cultural norms. You have to address social norms. You have to address religious norms. All of it, right? Like, it is so many. That's why I'm constantly talking about the fact that we cannot wade in the systems that our world is built on and think that we come out clean. We wade in them every day. We can't think that those rules don't stick to us. We can't think that other people's judgments don't stick to us. We can't think that other people's biases and racism and whatever it is don't stick to us. They do. And they absolutely start to cage us in if we aren't finding a way to address it in a consistent manner in our life and shed those beliefs, right? And create our home as a safe space
but it takes time to be able to give ourselves permission to create our home as a safe space.
You're absolutely right. And I know when you talk about other people's beliefs, I was really careful, at least I tried to be, of what I passed down or forced my children with, right? So my children have a 16-year gap between the oldest and the youngest.
There's 14 in
So,
my
so he got a lot of less, gotta do this and you gotta do that. You know what I mean? I let him do a lot of making his own choices, some good, sometimes good, sometimes bad, you know what I'm saying? And kind of grow into the person that he went, you know what I'm saying? So it didn't take him as long to try to unshed and relearn all this crap, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're, as a world, shifting the way that we are interacting with one another, the way that we're raising children, the way that we're understanding the world around us. It's a whole shift, and we're all kind of learning together. And it's absolutely a messy and weird process. Right? And just embracing that. I mean, that's the thing, is that when we embrace that it's a messy, weird world and we're just all figuring it out together, that's when we connect. That's when we find joy. It's when we think we have to have it all figured out, when we don't tap into curiosity, that's when we get guarded, when we get defensive, when we separate ourselves from one another, right? Because none of us knows. I mean, the reality is none of us knows what the hell we're doing.
You better say it.
We don't. We're just figuring it all out.
Figuring it out day by day. Yeah. What advice would you give someone who was maybe having a difficult time, maybe even finding themselves or trying to redesign their life?
Take a breath and trust.
You know what I'm saying?
Take a breath and trust yourself. You know exactly who you are. Usually what blocks us from being able to show up as our true selves is our fear that other people won't accept us, won't love us, will reject us. And the reality is they might. But by living your life trying to appease other people, you are slowly dying inside. And it's pain either way. Right? You're either living every day with the pain of not being able to show up as your whole self, or the pain of knowing that you've got to that a relationship has walked away from you. But in reality, you might be surprised when you step into your true self, when you give yourself permission to take up space, right? And not take space away from other people. I mean, who you are gets to take up space without taking space from other people.
Okay.
When you truly let yourself take up space, you will empower others to do the same. And sure, some people will fall out of your life, but new people will come. You'll form new community around you that is supporting you and being your best self, rather than limiting you and being scared of you. Because some people will be scared about you empowering yourself to live your full truest life because they're scared of what that means for them. They're not, right? Like in the reality of the whole world, we're all just thinking about ourselves. You know, we're trying to get through the day. We're not spending our life thinking about everybody in our life and and the intricacies of their days. We don't have time for that, right? So, you know, if we just take time and settle into ourselves, we recognize this is our life and we get to live it how we choose. And if you just take a breath and know that you know yourself already, you have always known yourself. The thing that makes it confusing is all the rules everybody else has put on you about who you're allowed to be and how you're allowed to show up, right? That's what makes it confusing. That's what blocks our view of who we actually are, but we know who we are.
How much of that do you think has to do with how we choose our mates, our significant others? You know what I mean? Like, how some people choose the same type of person over and over again, even though the person is probably not the type of person that they need.
Yeah. Well, typically, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I function like people's therapist sometimes. So here's what I've learned. Number one, for women, birth control changes things because it changes our sense of smell. And there's a whole psychology to the type of people that you're attracted to, whether or not you're on birth control. If you haven't looked that up as a femme presenting person or as a person with a uterus, you should absolutely do that because it's mind blowing and fascinating stuff.
Wow. Okay.
So that's number one. Number two is that I think oftentimes we are role playing, that we are choosing the people that we are romantically inclined with because we're working through our relationships with our parents. I mean, that's what science tells us over and over again. That's what psychology tells us, right? So we are partnering with people who are helping us to work through those relationships. And as we work through them, right, that relationship can grow. And sometimes that relationship falls away. And now we move on to a new relationship that's a healthier version, right? But for me, the place that I've gotten to in my life is that I'm really comfortable just being with myself.
Okay.
And I don't want to be with someone if they are in any way detracting from my life. If you aren't enhancing my life, I'm not interested, right? If you want, as a woman, right, oftentimes I'm expected to be someone's mother and their caretaker, their emotional piece. Meanwhile, they're bringing chaos into my life. Meanwhile, they don't have their stuff together and I'm supposed to figure it all out for them. Take care. No, I'm the CEO of a company. I run my own life and somehow I don't need anyone to take care of me. So I didn't grow up in this world and go through all the shit I've gone through to give over my life caring for you.
No, that's right.
Hell the fuck no. So I've gotten to a place in my life where if you aren't coming from a place of peace in your own life, just keep on moving. That's okay. And I think we find healthiest relationships when we get to that place where we are comfortable being with ourselves, where we know ourselves. And even though we know that we don't know everything about ourselves or we're just figuring it out, that we know what feels right and what doesn't, and we trust our intuition.
Yeah.
You know, trusting your intuition is a huge part of how we interact in romantic relationships.
Okay. And now when on my giving myself permission to be alone by myself, enjoy myself last year. And it was
let me tell you, single women are the happiest subset of women in the world, subset of people in the world.
You know, I just read that somewhere last week. You know,
70% of divorces are now, 70% of divorces are now pushed through by women, are now requested by women. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because women are just like, I'm okay, I'm good.
And I can do this.
Yeah.
So tell us how we can use your services. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah. So the best way to connect with me is through my website. It's www.concinnate.world, and that's CONCINNATE.world. All of my contact information is there. You can email me. You can connect to social media. You can also email me at Shana@concinnate.world. That's SHANA. That's a great way to connect with me. The way that I work with clients primarily now is I'm a speaker. And so I do a good amount of public speaking. I also work with people through workshops. I'm kicking off another round of group coaching starting in January that people can be a part of. I also have a book club that people can join. Book club is free. Coaching is not. So I try to connect with people, you know, in a variety of different ways so we can have discussions. And we're constantly reading books that are teaching us how to, you know, connect and create community. Right now I'm reading Maya Birdsong's How We Show Up. Yes. I'm like, yeah, I just want to make sure that's the name of the book. But, you know, we share these discussions around a variety of topics, personal development, and so on and so forth. So if people want to join, definitely reach out, definitely connect with me.
Excellent, because I am following you now on Facebook and on YouTube. So I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully being able to get and be in touch on a different level. I like that.
Awesome. I love that too.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being a guest on TME podcast. This has been really good.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining TME podcast. Please reach out to Shana. You can find her on Facebook. One more time, what's the Facebook?
My Facebook is Shana Francesca. Name spelled same as you see it on the screen.
All right. Very good. And then she's on YouTube as well. And I will link to your website in when everything posts. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining TME Podcast. I am Ms. Rhonda, your TME Podcast host, and I will see you at the top. Good night.